The development period of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep is hands down the most intriguing of all of the Kingdom Hearts games, with the idea being conceived back in 2005, with the game originally meant to be developed for PlayStation 2. It would be the very first Kingdom Hearts game to be developed by the Osaka team from Square Enix, who are now responsible for the Kingdom Hearts franchise, as the Tokyo team at the time were responsible for Kingdom Hearts, looking at KH1 and KH2. Leading up to the release of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix in March of 2007, the Osaka team had been requested to stop development on Birth by Sleep to develop Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories, a remake of the original Chain of Memories on Game Boy Advance. So Rechain of Memories would serve as Osaka team's very first Kingdom Hearts game. This halted Birth by Sleep's development by 6 months, and by the time Osaka team returned to developing BBS, it was decided that the game would shift platforms to PlayStation Portable. The game was announced in September of 2007 at the Tokyo Game Show, alongside Kingdom Hearts Coded and Days. Now this event is where the first known footage of BBS was ever shown. However, it was shown behind closed doors, and the attendees were prohibited to take photos or videos. The first public trailer for Birth by Sleep wouldn't be revealed until December of 2007, 3 months after TGS, which was shown at Jump Festa. This, for a lot of people, is the earliest known Birth by Sleep trailer, but in actual fact, there is another one. Now, I never knew about this unseen trailer until I came across this interview with Tetsuya Nomura and Famitsu back in 2007, with Famitsu asking in Birth by Sleep is the gameplay done by choosing action commands lined up in a command list. Nomura interestingly said the command menu that was shown to the public, aka scans and video, has now changed. A system close to that of Rechain of Memories has been created, successfully feeling like a command deck. However, the present screenshots show it was a bit too close to the idea of recom. The battle screens you see in the images now have already been changed. I wondered to myself, I had never seen this version of Birth by Sleep. Sure, I'd seen that beta trailer from Jump Festa 100 times, but this specific version? Interesting. Amazingly, I actually managed to find footage of that exact trailer that was shown at the Tokyo Game Show. Yeah, someone had sneakily recorded the trailer, and it shows us a very different looking command menu. What should be noted about this trailer though is it is very similar to the trailer that was then shown at Jump Festa. That Jump Festa just has a few additional cutscenes put into it, along with the update made to the command deck system. Now this video is incredibly low quality. It's really hard to make out this different looking command menu. With a stroke of luck though, I did manage to find some early scans from Famitsu of this build of Birth by Sleep, showing us a very clear view of this command menu. Rather than the command deck looking like a menu, it looks like it's more so laid out in a wheel, which is definitely reminiscent of the card deck HUD for Recom. You'll also notice how there is an additional command positioned to the side of the currently selected command in the menu. Judging by the footage that we have and the screenshots here, it almost seems like there was an additional slot that was specifically for stronger commands like aerial slam here that we can see Terra pulling off. In the footage, basic commands like sliding dash or simple magics are seen being used and cycled through the main portion of the menu. There is a good chance that at this point in development, the finishes for when you fill up the command gauge hadn't actually been implemented, and rather stronger commands like blitz or aerial slam were in place to be finishes. However, the main meat that we have from the beta version of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep is from the Jump Festa trailer. This is an amazing trailer because it shows us a lot of cutscenes and more gameplay. Now, a lot of these cutscenes are in the final version of Birth by Sleep, however, just in completely different locations. But there are some cutscenes that just straight up aren't in that final version. Like the very first scene that we see of Ven and Terra having a conversation in the Villain's Veil area of Radiant Garden. At this point in development, Square Enix hadn't developed the Birth by Sleep version of Radiant Garden. We can also tell that this literally is the Kingdom Hearts 2 version of the world, as we see the restored version of the castle off in the distance. I'm led to believe that this cutscene is actually taking place in this exact part of the area, just a little bit modified. We also know for the Birth by Sleep version of Radiant Garden, there is literally no scene that takes place on the outskirts of the city, as we know the early version of this world was surrounded by water. In this scene, Terra is talking to Ventus about about how he might be the person to save him. In the end, it was more of a team effort between Aqua and Ventus towards bringing Terra back, but originally, Tetsuya Nomura could have had it in mind that Ventus would be the sole reason as to why Terra was able to return. This next scene is a slightly different version of just before Xehanort and Terra face off. For one, it's in a completely different part of the Keyblade graveyard, likely because the big pillar portion that appears in the final game hadn't been developed just yet. However, basically the same lines and the exact same animations are used here. Ventus is seen having a conversation with Master Xehanort in Olympus Coliseum, which we know for the final build of the game, there is no conversation that takes place between these two in Olympus. Rather, a slightly different version of this conversation was switched to take place in the Keyblade graveyard towards the end of the game. Rather than Ventus standing up listening to what Master Xehanort has to say, speaking the famous chain of memory line, "You had to lose in order to find," Ventus is actually on his knees holding his head as he's starting to remember certain portions of his past. Also in the full version, there is no moment where Xehanort holds out his hand and a big orb of darkness is seen appearing. The same animation is in place, just without the darkness effect. Now looking at the gameplay portions of the Jump Festa trailer, we finally got to see Ventus gameplay, which wasn't present in that very first Tokyo Game Show trailer. Overall, there isn't really too many differences here in the gameplay. Square Enix had implemented the updated command deck system, however we do get to see a slightly different looking focus gauge as part of the heads-up display. Also, the D-Link meter is not present. At this point in development, they obviously hadn't developed the D-Link system, and you'll notice that Ventus's character head in the HUD is actually the Roxas art from Kingdom Hearts 2. It would also seem that the entire Ventus side of the Castle of Dreams world was changed to be replaced with Aqua. This gameplay shows us Ventus running through the castle interiors, and there's even a cutscene here where Ventus is outside the castle watching Cinderella walk up the steps. Because this cutscene doesn't appear in the final version, and there isn't even an instance where Ventus is replaced with Terra or Aqua in this moment, it tells you that Ventus's side of Castle of Dreams looked very different at this point in development. Terra can also be seen fighting unversed on the Enchanted Dominion bridge while it's covered in thorns. This again is from Aqua's side of the Enchanted Dominion story. At this stage in development, it's clear that Square Enix hadn't finalized each of the characters' stories throughout each of the Disney worlds. Aqua especially, as she doesn't appear in this trailer at all. It wouldn't be until the following year in 2008 that her character would finally be revealed. She does appear at the end of this trailer. Technically, you can see her shadow standing on the beach of Destiny Islands. But at this stage, Square Enix still hadn't finalized Aqua's model. And quickly talking about Aqua's model, the version that we see of her in early Birth by Sleep trailers was changed for the final version. In fact, it was actually censored. A lot of Aqua's back can be seen exposed. It's unclear whether or not it was Disney who requested the change to be made to cover up her back, but either way, they decided to cover Aqua's back as they thought it would be too risky. This scene was just completely taken out of the game altogether, a scene of Mickey dodging thunderbolts and eventually being struck by one. I would say this has something to do with Mickey's Mark of Mastery, which is taking place throughout the events of Birth by Sleep, and this is one of the trials that Yen Sid is pitching against Mickey. Perhaps Disney thought that they just didn't want their mascot character to be thunder-fried, so this might be why they settled for the scene of Mickey writing a book throughout the ocean to simply just appear back in the mysterious tower again. This cutscene was also removed from the game, a conversation between Maleficent and Terra on the Enchanted Dominion bridge while it's covered in thorns. We do know that Maleficent essentially manipulated Terra throughout his story in Enchanted Dominion. This scene definitely depicts a darker Terra though, and one that's more willing to do dark deeds, as judging by that ominous smile that he pulls. We see a scene of Terra watching young Sora and Riku having a sword fight on the beach of Destiny Islands, though what's different about this here is it's taking place on the main island. These next scenes show us portions from when Ventus faces off against Vanitas halfway through the game, and the conversation between Xehanort and Ventus toward the end of the game. No major differences here, but you might notice that the area in which this is taking place in the Keyblade graveyard looks better than the final version. This is because it's actually using the PlayStation 2 version of the Keyblade graveyard from Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, where we fight the Lingering Will. There are also better dust effects being used here too, which makes me think that some of these cutscenes cutscenes are actually running on PlayStation 2 hardware. The scene where Terra and Ericus are about to face off is taking place in the Great Moor portion of Radiant Garden here in the trailer, because again, Land of Departure likely hadn't been developed. There is no darkness effect here in the trailer swirling around Terra, and they also changed it so that Terra's Keyblade was already summoned as he was holding Ventus. The final scene that we see here is when Ventus is asking Aqua and Terra to put an end to him, which is happening on the main shore part of Destiny Islands. Again, this is where we see Aqua's shadow, but interesting that it's not taking place in the Keyblade graveyard. Again, a lot of these scenes we got to see in the final build of the game. They're just rearranged and put into different locations. At the time, clearly that portion of the Keyblade graveyard hadn't been developed, but I can't help but wonder if it was actually intentional, where some of these moments were to actually take place in entirely different worlds. Toward the end of 2008, when full promotion for Birth by Sleep was beginning, Square Enix held an exclusive event for journalists to finally play a demo of the game. IGN actually do have footage of this demo version, which shows us again a different looking HUD. D-Link had finally been developed at this point, though its gauge on the heads-up display resembles that of the final gauge for the focus meter. The focus meter's gauge here resembles that of an MP bar from Kingdom Hearts 2. In fact, the whole heads-up display for these different gauges and the health bar heavily resembles the entire Kingdom Hearts 2 heads-up display. Partway through the development, there was also planned for a story scenario to be attached to the Mirage Arena. Laguna Loire, a character from Final Fantasy VIII, was planned to be the head, the master of the Mirage Arena. Unfortunately, the inclusion of Laguna along with the Mirage Arena scenario was scrapped, as they rather decided to chuck Laguna in as a character for Final Fantasy Dissidia Duodecim. And lastly, perhaps the most famous piece of cut Kingdom Hearts content is the Jungle Book. Ideas and concepts for worlds are thrown around all the time for Kingdom Hearts, but getting to a point where multiple areas of a world are completely developed, then the idea of the world is totally scrapped, doesn't exactly happen too often. Here in the original Japanese version of Birth by Sleep remains files for a Jungle Book world with multiple different areas. Some of these areas, in regards to their assets and textures, were completely finished, whereas others are clearly a work in progress. Jungle Book actually has a long-running history in Kingdom Hearts. It's a world that is constantly always put forward, but then replaced with something else. I do hope that in the future we eventually get to see the Jungle Book finally come to light. So that's everything you need to know about the development of Birth by Sleep and its early versions. Definitely one of the most interesting Kingdom Hearts development phases. To think that this game was originally concepted to be a PlayStation 2 game, I can't help but wonder how different the game may have looked. Thank you guys so much for tuning on in. Be sure to subscribe to keep up with everything that's going on here. Check out my other social media platforms. A big thank you to my turkey-tastic patrons. Appreciate the support. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.